Hi, it's Brian here and welcome onto today's show. Now, as always, there's going to be some really important acting information for you to take on board today. And in fact, this first question really has to do with a certain thing that actors at some point in their acting career have to deal with and overcome. So let's get to that first question.
How do actors overcome stage fright? Rose Newbigging.
Okay, stage fright. Yes, well, at some point, usually most actors at some point will experience some form of stage fright, and there's different levels of it, obviously, because, before any performance, you're bound to have some, anticipation, nerves, but really stage fright is when the actor becomes completely disabled, basically, to the point where they can't function on stage or on set. So we never want you to get to that point, but like I said, there's been many of an actor that has suffered from this all through their career and had to deal with it. So how do you deal with stage fright? Well, let's talk about where it comes from, because how does stage fright manifest itself in the first place? Well, it really comes from a thought process, doesn't it? Because if you're frightened of performing, then basically what's happening is you're worried about how you might be perceived. You're worried about what the audience may think of you. You're worried about getting it wrong, potentially. So what we have to do is direct your attention away from those things. And really those things are really about you, aren't they? You're really involved with yourself when you're thinking about what are the consequences going to be of this performance. And really the character isn't having those sort of thoughts. So what we have to do is bring your attention and focus back to the character. So one of the best ways, and we've talked about this in other shows, to do that is through a thing called sense and effective memory, because when you start to focus on something that's going to help fuel the emotion or the experience within a scene, you're no longer thinking about, is this going to be any good, or what will the audience think of me? You're now really starting to get involved in an experience that's going to help you within the scene. And that experience is what the character is feeling. So having that sort of tool available to think about before you perform is, in my opinion, vital. So again, effective memory, a big tick there. You've got to get that in place. The other thing that you have to have is some sort of relaxation process, even before you do effective memory. Within method acting, we have a relaxation process that is conducted in a chair. And it's a way of mentally and physically relaxing before you have to perform. Because you can't underestimate the transition that has to happen when you walk in off the street into an audition room or a rehearsal room or into a theatre for a performance or set, that you have to make some sort of transition from the norm into a more artistic mode. And often that has to do with really beginning to relax and really understanding what's going on internally in you. Because here's the funny thing about actors is that who you are physically, mentally, is your instrument. That's what you've got to play with in order to create these characters. Now, other artists, such as a musician, has something external to them to create that artistry. So a musician has an actual musical instrument to play. Now, the thing about that musical instrument is it doesn't change that much. It might slightly change if it's made of wood, but it doesn't fundamentally change that much. So they can depend on the instrument performing in a certain way each and every time. Now, the interesting thing about an actor is that you are constantly changing. You're bombarded on a daily basis with different experiences, and that affects and changes the instrument. So you have to go through a process of beginning to assess how the instrument is today. And that should be part of your relaxation process. And as you begin to do this relaxation process, you're getting really in touch with yourself before you begin to make that performance. And that's important because part of stage fright is a sort of out of control thing, that you're not really in touch with what's really going on. And when you actually go through a relaxation process like this, it really brings your attention back to how you're really feeling and getting in touch with your own feelings and emotions and experiences again. And then beginning to direct them in an area that is more beneficial to you in order to produce the kind of work that you want to produce. Now, I know that's quite a long answer, and in some ways, we don't have the time and place, I guess, right now to go into the intricacies of that. But in the long and short of it, that's what you have to have in place. Effective memory and a good relaxation process. Okay, let's go to the next question.
What can I do if the films and TV programmes I want to work with are all based in London and there's nothing close to me that I can work with? Louise Wellands.
Okay, so what do you do if you think and feel that the acting industry is all here in London town, but you don't live in London? Well, here's a radical idea. Why don't you move? Why don't you come to London? Now, I know I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek here, but, people do it all the time. They get onto a bus, a train, or they even get a plane to come to London in order to be here amongst it. But let me take a step back for a moment, because I've actually been in your position where I wasn't in London. In fact, I was living in a little rural town in Scotland, and I had this notion, this idea that I wanted to be an actor, but obviously there was nothing happening in that particular area. Now, I didn't live near Glasgow, so there was obviously an opportunity to be involved in the industry there, and there is an industry there. But however, I felt I wanted to be involved in the big picture, if you like, or in a big pond here in London and be involved in that. Because really there is such a lot going on in London from an acting perspective, it makes sense to be here, right? Now, you might feel that making that move isn't exactly easy. Maybe you've grown up in that area and you lived there all your life, and the idea of leaving all that behind to come and live in this big city seems a bit scary. Well, here's the thing. At the end of the day, the industry's not going to come to you, I'm afraid. You've got to go to the industry. It's not going to, come and find you in your little town somewhere. Basically, you've got to come to it, and you've got to want it enough in order to do that. But at the end of the day, that's what's got to happen. Preferably, because if you've got an agent, for example, in London, they'll expect you to be available to go for auditions in London as well. Now, of course, you might decide that you don't want to live in London, or it's not for you, and you could maybe be part of the acting community in Manchester, Birmingham, or Glasgow, wherever. But it's got to be quite a sizable city where there is an industry, where there are people producing film and TV. But listen, for me, at the end of the day, London is where it's at. In this area, there's more casting directors, agents, producers, film companies, theatre than anywhere else in the country. So from an acting perspective, it makes sense to be in London. But maybe that's what you just have to do. If you're pursuing a dream, if you're pursuing something that you want to do in life, I'm afraid to tell you, it doesn't always come, come to your door and land in your lap. You have to go to it. So make some plans to go towards it, whatever city that might be for you, but make sure that you go out and make it happen. Okay, so let's go on to the next question.
What advice can you give me for my first audition? Jay Lamotte.
Okay, so some advice for your very first audition. Well, whether it's your very first audition or your 100th audition, I think there's certain things that you need to be aware of and put into practice. Here's the first thing is, as soon as you find out that you've got an audition and they're requesting you to come in and read for a part, or audition for a part, from that point on, you should think that the part is yours for the length of time, at least from the length of time of being told that you have the audition till the audition. Actually, this was told to me by a casting director in Hollywood called Tineke Becker, very nice lady. And she had this kind of ethos around auditions. She said the actors should really think that as soon as they hear that they have that audition, that's their part, the part is theirs, at least from the time that they've been told about it until they get into and do the audition. He says, hopefully they have it after that point, but certainly for that period, you should think that the part is yours. And I think that's a really good way of approaching it, because from the point of view is that you start to think in more detail in a way. If you think, this is my role. And you then have to do all the preparation that's required. Now, you might think that, well, of course I'm going to prepare for an audition. Who wouldn't prepare for an audition? You would be surprised. There's a lot of casting directors that will say, one of the biggest issues that we have is that people don't prepare. Some people don't prepare enough. Now, it's not everybody, but there's a certain element who don't fully prepare. So that's kind of good news for you, right? Because that means if you do prepare, you do the preparation that's required, then you're already ahead of the game, right? And by preparation, I mean things like, reading the full script, not just your part within the script. That's if you can get your hands on the full script. So if they send you the full script, make sure you read the whole thing. Do your homework on who you're auditioning for, the casting director, the director. What kind of work have they been involved in before? Get an idea of the kind of ethos that they have, or the thinking processes, if possible, behind their work, because that might be a conversation that you can that you can have when you're in the room with them, and it shows that you're really interested. So fully prepare for the character. Come up with some choices for the character. So one of the things that I've seen quite a number of actors do is that they don't make a solid choice. So they have a number of options, perhaps. They've got an idea of the character, and it's like, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this. And what happens is that they kind of don't really commit themselves to any one particular way. They kind of just let it kind of grow in a kind of middle ground where there's no definite idea. This is a big mistake. Let me tell you, it's a huge mistake. You've got to get absolutely clear in your own mind about what you think the character is like and start to execute that in the room. Now, whether it's right or wrong doesn't really matter, because the director or the casting director can always redirect you, but at least you would have shown them what you think of the character. They will see that you've put in time and effort to think about how the character should be played. So I think that's really important for you to do in advance. Always try and learn the script if you can. You know, for TV and film, more often than not, you'll be given what they call sides. And you will be expected to know the script very well, if not have learnt it. I would recommend that you learn it if you can. Take the script in with you though, because sometimes casting directors or directors can get a little bit nervous if you walk in without a script, because they want to hear the full scene in flow. And if you have to start and stop because you've forgotten a line here and there, then that's not really what they want. So even if you are really confident with the script, still take the script in with you, because just having it in your hand will make them feel more confident that you're going to be able to do it. So anyway, before you even get into the room, here's a couple of things to think about. Always turn up early. I can't stress how vitally important that is, because if you turn up late, or even just before you're meant to go in, and you turn up flustered and you're sweating, you've been running for a bus or whatever's been going on, then you're not really prepared. You're off center, you might be a little bit off kilter. So make sure you turn up early. I would recommend that you turn up an hour early and go and find a coffee shop or something to sit in, have a coffee, relax, go over the script, think about what you're going to be doing in the audition. But certainly you don't want to be turning up just before you're about to do it. When you get to the audition room and you're about to go in, don't take in your bags and your coat and your bottles of water and anything else that you brought with you, because when you walk into the room, you want it to be clean, and you want to be able to exit the room in a clean way as well. What you don't want to turn up is with your bags and coat and your bottle of water and stuff, and then struggling into the room, trying to sort all of that stuff out, and creating an awkward moment. So if you can, leave it in the room outside. Come into the room just with the script ready to deliver. Once you're finished doing the audition, then you can also leave that way, because you've got nothing to pick up on the way out. Something else for you to think about when you're dealing with the audition panel, be it the director or casting director, they may test you by redirecting you. And what I mean by that is that you might do the part in a certain way, and they say, that was great, but can you do it like this? Now, when they tell you to do it a different way, try not to look shocked or surprised, or even worse, disagree with them. Never try to disagree with them, right? Because it's not necessarily that they think the character should be done like that. They might just be testing to see if you can be directed. So when they ask you to do it a different way, make sure that you fully execute that different way. It should be completely fulfilled. Don't leave it in a middle ground where it's not really clear if you execute it or not. So for example, maybe you were doing the scene, and the scene that you were doing it angrily, because it seems like this is an angry scene, and the anger seems to be the predominant emotion. Now, if the director says to you, I want you to do it a different way, I want you to do it as if, this character finds it really funny. Now, don't argue with them. Just accept that that's what the director would like to see, and then execute that fully. Really go for the humor and really allow yourself to do it. Because what you're showing them is, I can be directed. And that is they're really interested in that, because if they're going to spend 6 months with you on a film, the last thing they want is to be working with an actor that can't do it different ways. So make sure that you fully execute being directed. Okay, so look, I could spend a lifetime on how to do auditions. There's so many things and different things that you have to take into consideration, but I think we've covered some of them here, and certainly some that you can put into practice right away. So there we go. Brings us to the end of the show. I know, it's hard to believe, isn't it? It goes so quickly. Now, if you would like to send in some questions, then this is how you do it. You go onto Facebook, you can post a question there, Twitter, Snapchat, send me in an email, or even better, why not a video of you asking the question with an exotic background? I know, like I have here, such exoticness. So yeah, send in your stuff. Let's answer your questions and put it into practice. Okay, I look forward to seeing you on the next show.